Hi, everybody. I'm Candid Stanisci of NLL Lacrosse Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google, Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and all small smart TVs. 2016 forward. And joining me is my partner in lacrosse crime, Gary Groob, and our very special guest today is Reid Reinholdt. He is the Vice President and Executive Director of the NLLPA. Hey, Reid, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on here.
Yeah, no worries. It's always a lot of fun to talk lacrosse, but we always want to know, our first question always is how did you end up getting involved with lacrosse? And if you picked up a stick, why?
Well, I got involved when I was about 3 years old, I think. Our family friend was the president of Coquitlam Lacrosse at the time, and both my brother and I played hockey, and we were strongly encouraged to play lacrosse in the summer to keep our hockey hands going. So that's kind of how we got started, and have kind of continued since then.
And what brought you to the PA?
Honestly, it was a perfect kind of blend of two of my passions, one being lacrosse and the other being law. And it sort of matched my skill set. And I've always wanted to kind of give back and help out the players. And it's a perfect platform to do that.
Okay, Gary?
Well, why did you choose lacrosse over hockey? Because you and your brother both were good hockey players.
I think we were at kind of the top 1% of lacrosse and maybe the top 5% of hockey. And, maybe the path to hockey was a little bit more difficult. And I personally just really loved the sport of lacrosse. And I think I liked it a little bit more than hockey. And it was a really good opportunity to get scholarships and continue our education and things like that as well.
Right. Now you started out playing at Charles Best Secondary School. Let's talk about how much of a program was there and was able to get you to move forward as well as playing with the Adanacs.
Yeah, it was actually a surprisingly good program when I look back at it, considering some of the players we had on our teams. We had, Robert Church, Westberg, both Jeff and Travis Cornwall went through there, Marty Dinsdale. So, between our 3 years, kind of the year above me and the year below me, we had some really talented lacrosse players that just kind of were in that school district. It started a few years before us, but lacrosse in BC was almost, if you had a group of lacrosse players going to your school, you would have a program. But if they weren't there for a couple of years, your program kind of dissolved. So there wasn't a ton of teams to play against. Claremont on the island was good. New West had a good team, but there wasn't a lot of competition, but it was still pretty fun.
Right. What about the coaching there?
We kind of had different coaches every year. Usually they were a young coach kind of filling in. And then we had Mr. House as our sort of head guy with the school that was helping out.
Right. Now, you were also at the same time, you were playing junior lacrosse with the Coquitlam Adanacs. You went through their program, storied program, still storied. Let's talk a bit about the program itself and when you got in and moved your way up through there.
Yeah, so when I was kind of going into junior, it was a little bit different out west than it was out east. So I played 2 years of intermediate, which was pretty common out west unless you were a really, really top tier guy. And so played 2 years of intermediate and then moved up and started playing some junior. We made it to a couple Minto Cups, but couldn't quite get over that hump of winning it. Once again, had some really good teams there. But ran into some stiff Eastern competition a couple times.
Right. Well, you had, just like your secondary school, Robert Church, Ben McIntosh, Westberg, Matthew Tinsdale. It goes on and on and on. I would kill to get that as my NLL team, let alone as a junior team.
Yeah, that's very true. But unfortunately, there were some other teams that looked kind of similar to that.
Right. Now, you got involved with field. How? You were a box player. Like, what got you all of a sudden? Like, I got to run in the field now.
Well, we were kind of told that to get scholarships, we needed to play a little bit of field lacrosse and learn field lacrosse. So I did my best to learn it. It was super new to all of us. It was basically going right from hockey practice to field lacrosse practice because it was during the winters. Most of us BC kids had sort of Rubbermaids as our lacrosse bags because it rained so much. So those kept our gear dry. But honestly, it was very unorganized. I would say it's a lot more organized now.
Right.
But I also played with there's an SFU, Simon Fraser University traveling team. And so we went to a couple tournaments in the States with that team, and it helped to get some scholarship looks as well.
Right. Well, our true Canadian team is a bunch of box guys playing box on a field, right? And
that's right.
That's kind of how our program got put together, and it's continued along. But now it's really grown. You were mentioning, the road to scholarships. Nowadays, it's a lot easier. Excuse me, with places like the Hill Academy, and guys looking out for the students. When you were going to school, this wasn't around, so you had to kind of feel for yourself on where you were going, what you were going to do, and how you're going to do it.
Yeah, there's a lot more guidance now. When I was getting recruited to the States, I wasn't really aware of the big schools and, what was a really good lacrosse program. It wasn't even on my radar. I was getting advice from some parents and stuff like that, but was really unaware. Luckily, my brother was 2 years ahead of me, so he went down to a junior college and started to understand the landscape a little bit better by the time I was heading down there. But there's a lot more knowledge out there now. Lacrosse guys are kind of helping guide other lacrosse guys, and I think there's a lot more information out there now.
Well, because I think you were in school in Victoria, weren't you, for engineering?
And I was really set on taking engineering out of high school. I really enjoyed physics and math and all that type of stuff, and sort of turned down a couple of scholarships to some decent places. But after going to school at UVic for a couple of years, I changed my major to business economics, and that sort of opened up some doors to some of the schools in the States that didn't have engineering when I was originally looking.
Right. Now, you found yourself in the Limestone program. I know your brother went there as well. Is that the convincing factor?
Sorry for the dog. I think I just have some visitors coming to meet the newborn.
I can bring mine on if you like.
Tor was the main driver for me going down to Limestone. Actually, going back to the junior days, it was myself and Vinny Ricci were playing on the left side for the Coquitlam Junior Adanacs, and we were both going to UVic at the same time as well, and we worked well together on the floor. And so my brother was able to recruit both of us at the same time. We were both doing the same summer labor job and everything like that. So we kind of both left UVic and headed down to Limestone together.
Now, playing for Limestone, as a guy who's not a field player, you certainly turned a lot of heads. You made it into all of the games, all 18 games in 2013, off the bench, but you made it into all of them, and you made significant contributions, enough to really turn heads for 2014 and above. Let's talk about as you were getting comfortable playing field.
Yeah, so I kind of started off on attack. I'm sure as many box guys do. But we had Riley Lowen down there, who was a good lefty attackman, and we had some other more established, older senior players. And I was a decent runner, which might have been my pitfall to getting moved to the midfield. But I really enjoyed playing midfield more and more as I understood the game more. I felt like you could really control the game from the midfield position. You can get quick, fast breaks. You can kind of point out the matchups that are available. You can set up the offense. So I really did start to enjoy midfield. I had really good coaches and teammates that made it easy to learn. Obviously, it was fun playing with Tor for a year there. Unfortunately, broke my wrist the second year, so that's probably why there's some weird sort of games played and statistics my second year there. But I was kind of playing with a cast on my second year there, where I could only move the tip of my thumb and and my top of my fingers when I came back. So I was more of just a decoy to get the long pole and open up some space for the other guys. But for the most part, it felt pretty useless coming back from that escape weight injury.
Right. Well, you missed the first half of the year, but you made up for it. You certainly picked up for the last 9 games of the season. Member of the NCAA Division II champions that year as well.
That's right. Yeah.
So we'll move over, and we're talking about getting into the NLL. Now you go undrafted your first year, and you go into the Arena Lacrosse League. Am I correct?
Not really. I played a summer out in Coquitlam, Senior A, and Toronto signed me following that year because they also knew I was heading out east to go to law school.
Right.
And then I played with the Western Mustangs my first semester there, and that pretty much brought me right into training camp with the Rock. I did get drafted by someone in the ALL, but I didn't actually end up playing any games.
Oh, okay. I have an affiliation with the ALL. I do their media, so I've got ALL on the brain since last week's championship. And I joke with them is that my family went to their church and I went to mine. I was at the track all weekend. So
fair enough. I had a couple friends that played in the Western ALL championship, and a couple of them won actually. So they're pretty pumped about it. They really enjoyed it.
Well, that's a great thing now. Now that guys get to hold the sticks all year long, as opposed to if you don't make a team and in the closet it goes until next spring, and
Exactly.
trying to get the dust off again and going again. Let's talk about that as now as your position with the NLLPA, with the ALL as a feeder league, and the importance of that league for the guys coming up.
Yeah, I think it's really important to just have that kind of continuation of play. Like you mentioned before, you're not just putting your stick away, and if a team needs somebody coming off the shelf, they're not coming right off the shelf completely dry. They're actually had some games in and everything like that. And it helps for maybe some practice roster guys who aren't getting in a ton of games. They maybe have a practice a week. And if it's a travel team, it's maybe a fairly light practice the game night before a game. So it really helps them get that competitive lacrosse action in. So I think it's super valuable, and I hope it continues to thrive.
On top of that, I think it's also these guys are game ready. I think they've put something like 25 or 30 guys in the league that are ready, and it teaches them how to. It's not just get up into the NLL; it's staying in the NLL, how to be a professional.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the NLL rosters aren't huge, and there's injuries, etc. So you can find yourself needing somebody here and there pretty easily. And kind of just getting into that groove is super important.
All right, let's go back to your NLL travel, and you get on the radar with Josh Sanderson seeing you play, and from there you make it into the Rock organization.
Yeah, that was my understanding of kind of what happened behind the scenes. I think maybe Challen Rogers and Westberg, while they were out playing for Oakville, might have put in a good word for me as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, ultimately being undrafted was, it kind of sucked, but at the same time, it really opened up the opportunity to, sign with anybody, and Toronto was perfect. I couldn't have played for anybody else while I was going to school. So it was really a perfect opportunity.
Right. And you made the most out of your opportunity. You got onto the practice squad and eventually onto the regular roster.
Yeah, it was coming out of camp. I think I had an injury, maybe a hamstring injury or something like that. And we obviously had some really good players with the Rock already. And so just kind of waiting on the sidelines until I had an opportunity. And I think injuries or lineup changes got me in, and just tried to make the most of every opportunity.
Right. Now, you got in around 2017. Let's talk about the culture of the team. I know it hasn't changed much since then. It's always about winning now. It's never about a rebuild ever. Talk about the team itself and playing for Matt, Blaine.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I never met Terry Sanderson, but you can tell his impact still exists within that club, and you hear a lot about him and what he stood for. And so I think the culture's continued from Terry all the way down to Maddie and the rest of the coaches. That year I got there was quite a bit of turnover. We had some of the old guard kind of heading out, and then you had, Latrell, Challen, Tom Schreiber kind of coming in for their first years. So it was a bit of a turning of the new leaf, but the culture remained the same. And like you said, it was about winning. And I think it felt like a rebuild year going in, but I think we might have made playoffs, or we were at least competitive that year. And so it's pretty cool to see the success the Rock continue to have.
Right. And Jamie is an owner. To me, probably the best owner in the league. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, he's a quality guy. I'm happy to call him a friend too. Came to my wife and I's wedding and on a road trip with him before, and nothing but good things to say about Jamie.
It's funny because we're living vicariously through Josh Talwick now. Josh and I used to sit basically side by side for the games when he was really young. I had just actually sent Jamie a picture of about 10 years ago, and little Josh and me, and now we're cheering for him as he's in his second year in the NLL. So pretty amazing. And
that's funny.
I'm pretty sure brothers too.
Yeah, the whole family is great. All the kids are awesome. Jamie's wife's great too, and they treat everybody really well, and kind of how they'd want to be treated themselves.
Right. Now, even before you got moved, there were rumblings around, and I'm talking with Jamie, and that you wanted to be back closer to home in BC, and you were looking to try and give you your wish and get you moved there. In comes the Vegas team, and off you go to Vegas. What was the your only team was Toronto, and now you're going over to Vegas. Your initial reactions?
So moving home, I really wanted to article in BC because if I articled in Ontario, I would have to rewrite the bar and redo everything if I ever wanted to move home. So that was the big driver behind that. And Toronto was super flexible with me for a year, navigating all of that. And it was pretty difficult. It was tough on the body, and I thought it was probably best to head out west. Really enjoyed the time with Las Vegas. Obviously a brand new expansion franchise, so there was a couple bumps along the way. But overall, a lot of good people there. The players are awesome. So it's I hope they continue to have some success there.
It's funny. I was just watching the other day a retro game. I have a ton of these games up on our YouTube page, and it was Saskatchewan, Toronto, just before the lockdown, just before COVID, and the game you had there was amazing. You had a couple of goals there, and I believe it was a 9-8 win. I was one of, I think, 3 Rock fans in that building, and they kept showing the one guy on TV, and he looked like he was high-fiving. Well, he was. I was on the other side of the arena, and we were
awesome.
Across the arena just to, kind of getting across of Saskatchewan fans who were letting me hear it all first half as I think it was 6-2 for them in the first half, and then Toronto woke up and took the game. But it was a lot of fun. But some of the goals you scored, reckless abandon, no problem, diving from behind the net.
That was that was the year I came back from my ACL injury, the whole knee reconstruction injury, and I was kind of easing my way back in, and that was kind of the game where I finally felt good and confident again. And I'm sure you could tell by the way I jumped from behind the net there.
Yep, and your shot was back too, because you just had an absolute bullet out of your stick. So, everything looked like it was going in the right direction.
Much appreciated.
So let's talk about Vegas. One of the selling points was to get your brother there, tour, and get him to sign in as well. So you finally, after all these years, you get a chance to play with your brother professionally.
Yeah, we went through some difficult family stuff a few years ago, and it really kind of pushed us together and really made us want to try to play together in the NLL. And he was pretty happy on San Diego. He felt like he could win with them. They were a championship contender, but at the same time, we were both kind of looking for a change, and it actually worked out really well. We both really enjoyed playing for Sato when he was there last year as well, and it was a nice pairing.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. So you get into an expansion team, and everything's new. All the guys are new. Everybody's got to try and figure out chemistry. All the things that you're used to from all the other teams that you've played on, you throw that out the window. Now it's a brand new arena, brand new management, brand new coaching, brand new players. How do you get around all that and just, sit and focus on just playing?
Yeah, I think you just have to try to do what you do best, and hopefully a role is kind of carved out, or you carve out a role for yourself. You kind of start to learn what other people do and how they play and where you might fit in. That was one thing I found a little bit easier with Toronto, was finding a role and understanding it and playing it. I thought, well, I struggled a little bit more finding a role with Vegas. I started on offense last year, then I got moved to D, and I kind of settled into that defense transition role, and then this year kind of bounced around again. So I had a little bit more difficulty finding a role in Vegas, to be completely honest.
Right. Working for Sean Williams, I know how great he was with the juniors and with Whippy, and even watching him at the draft as his players are getting drafted, it's just as though his own kids are being drafted. What's it like in the professional level working with him?
Yeah, he's a great leader, great motivator. He clearly cares about all his players. I really think Sean's a great guy, great coach.
If his speeches are anything like what I watched at the NLL Hall of Fame, man, people will be ready to run through a wall for him.
Yeah, he knows how to move people, that's for sure.
Right. Talk about the fan base. You went into a place where really Vegas know much about lacrosse. So what kind of programs, I would assume since you're on the West Coast that you were there a bunch trying to get things rolling, kind of like what San Diego did with their players, and just to get the grassroots programs going and get interest happening, and of course go for the young kids so that you have a fan base for many, many years.
Yeah, so they've started rolling out that kind of grassroots program with some schools and stuff like that. I think they focused a little bit more on that this year, now that they got their kind of bearings under them a little bit, as opposed to last year. But honestly, going into that first game and the first anthem and hearing a lot of the people do yell night when, just like they do at the Golden Knights games, it was like, oh, okay, I think we might be able to have some of these hockey fans transfer over to lacrosse. It's a little cheaper ticket.
Right.
Maybe we can get some more families, etc. So there has been actually some pretty good, diehard fans, which is kind of weird to say considering it's only 2 years old, but some diehard fans that followed us down to San Diego when we had that outdoor game. They're meeting us after the games to say hi. They're remembering details about us and stuff like that. So I think there is a fan base starting to grow out there pretty organically.
Right. Let's talk about that outdoor game. Setting history. Absolutely incredible. And I remember watching it. It was just like, wow, this would be really cool to be at. What was it like? Because I know the field is fantastic.
That was one of the coolest lacrosse events I've been a part of, for sure. Two of the other cool ones were the NCAA finals, which are played in, football stadiums. But there was something about the box outside and the spider cam when you watch it after, and some of those angles, and they did a really good job putting the fans kind of all in that end zone area there, and it was great, and they treated us really well after with bite to eat and stuff like that. So it was really well done.
Yeah, I got to give San Diego credit on a lot of things. I was out there a couple of weeks ago for a game, and to see their practice facility again outdoors, it's just like, wow, if only.
They needed to upgrade.
You have to take 4 inches worth of ice out of it, let alone all the snow. But just the thought of it is just amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now this season you had a little bit more difficulty. You were out of the lineup a little bit more, and Vegas cut you at the trade deadline. Gives you a little more time now as a new father. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah. No, it was tough sledding for me this year. I felt good in camp. I felt like I played well in the scrimmages, and then kind of when the season came around, I don't know. It was weird. I was struggling to make something happen. My confidence level was pretty low, and sometimes you just kind of get stuck in that mental cycle a little bit. And I was kind of going in the short-term holdout leading up to the birth of my child, and then at the trade deadline, we made some moves, and it sounded like there wasn't going to be a roster spot for me when I was coming off of holdouts. So, yeah, that's okay. Things happen for a reason. It's been nice to be able to focus on the home life and be a helping hand and not have to stress about traveling on the weekends. But
right, sure.
Obviously, I love lacrosse, and I definitely miss it.
No, I know when you first got going, we had a texting conversation, and I'd asked about if you put any feelers, because a couple of teams stood out to me that could really use you. One is Vancouver, which is right around the corner from you, and the rebuild there. And of course, now since we've talked about that, they've won 4 of the last 5 games, and I think the culture is finally changed to back when they were the stealth, and that idea of championship wins and team first and all that. The other one that came across me was, of course, Calgary, and Josh Sanderson being the coach GM, and that would have stood out, especially with your connection with him through Toronto. Have you put any feelers out, or have any of these things come across, or is it still too soon, and still being daddy is one in the moment?
Yeah, the Vancouver thing is it's good to see. Being somebody from BC, you want that team to have success, and knowing Kurt a little bit from junior, and just understanding how he functions, you knew he was going to be able to turn the culture and the team around. If it wasn't partway through this year, it was going to be next year or the year after or something like that. So it's definitely good to see them heading in the right direction. I'm sure they'll continue to go there. The signing of street free agents, I think the deadline is tomorrow, if I remember correctly. Perhaps it's today, but I actually just signed with Toronto 2 days ago. So I'm sure that transaction will
eventually make it on the website.
come through maybe at some point here. But yeah, we thought that could be a good mix. Obviously, Toronto's had some injuries, and I've been with them in the past, so there's some familiarity there. And we've had injury trouble in the playoffs in the past, and it's been a bit of our kryptonite. And so I'm kind of sticking to my dad's stuff for now, but waiting eagerly by in case there's some stuff that happens and they need me. But I don't want to ruin a good thing that they have going, but at the same time, I'm happy to help if they need me.
The PA thing that you're doing, in listening to all this and the challenges that you have, being a new father, being a free agent, talking about before you signed, of course, how much has it helped your understanding of the kind of life players actually have and the challenge? And we haven't even talked about your job, right? You know what I'm saying? Like that being a lacrosse player and being in the NLL, this is not a criticism or a compliment. It's just it's a question really, and something I'm trying to point out. The challenges of being a player in the NLL. There's a lot of undertones and things that are pulling at you that other sports don't have to worry about. How has that affected your perspective as the guy and a vice president of the
PA? I think every decision that we make kind of regarding the NLL, you have to think of people's life outside of it. If you're talking NHL, you're laser focused on the NHL life of these guys. But for us, we have to think of the whole picture. The league would probably like to have more Friday games because that's better for broadcast viewership, but maybe that's not necessarily better for the Monday to Friday player because they're now missing perhaps 2 days of work rather than 1. And it's hard to make that up even with the missed work pay that we're paid. So honestly, it gives a really good perspective of what guys have to balance with. There's only so many vacation days guys can take. they have to have very supportive and understanding spouses for 5-6 months. Yeah, there's a lot of competing priorities going on. That's for sure.
It's convoluted, complicated, and it's really difficult. And I'm not one of those people, and I can see it, so I can't imagine what it's like for players. And you're just one example. There are a lot of different experiences as well, right? So I'm not trying to suggest that you understand what every NLL player is going through, just that you have a pretty good laundry list of what they might be going through.
That's true, and we do try to, send out questionnaires and stuff like that, so we do have a better understanding of the jobs that guys have out there and sort of their ability to work remote or everything like that. So it's quite a crazy landscape of professionals that we have, and you have a quarter of the guys about are full time, and then you have Americans or people with really serious careers that have to step away from box lacrosse just because it doesn't add up for them, either financially or time wise. So it's a very unique league with a lot of nuances, and it's a balancing act for everybody.
Absolutely.
Now let's talk about the NLLPA. You started as a player rep with Toronto. How did it become that you wound up being a VP and executive director?
The player rep was a really interesting role for me. It was a really good way for me to get a better understanding of the law. Honestly, I was in labor and employment classes, and sitting in on these meetings and being able to kind of combine those things, maybe understand principles and all that type of stuff a lot better. And while I was in that role, I tried to make some suggestions or get involved or help out more, just sort of push for more stuff. And as things sort of played out, Zach and I felt that there was a good time to change. We felt like we had a good ear to the ground. We felt like we understood the issues, kind of like you were saying earlier. We lived and breathed what the guys were going through. Mm-hmm. Our interests were completely aligned with the rest of the players, and we were super passionate about helping. So there's an election every 3 years, and so we did a bit of our due diligence. We sort of looked around for perhaps a more veteran player person to step into one of the roles. But at the end of the day, Zach and I were the two that were willing and able to do it. So we kind of put our campaign together and ran for the positions. It's obviously, politicking is kind of awkward and talking about yourself and trying to sell yourself. And, it wasn't really something that either of us necessarily enjoyed doing, but we tried to just get our vision across to the guys without kind of putting down anybody else. And so we were just sort of focused on the future and hoped that the guys could see what we saw.
How helpful is it to have prior relationships? Because a lot of times, again, comparing, of course, other sports in the NLL, it's a grassroots sport, literally. And even the people who are big players like yourself, you come out of the grassroots. A lot of times they'll bring in somebody who's big in labor law and that kind of stuff. How interesting do you think it is to be in that position and close to the people that you're working with? It almost, what you were in the past really is important. It can be the foundation for how much trust the players have for you, right?
Yeah, I think so. And you can come in and try to build a relationship once you're in that role. But for us, we sort of already had those relationships, and then we were just expanding that trust within those roles and just communicating more, et cetera. I think when you have a large staff, and some of those, for the NHL, for example, they have a large staff, and maybe they have people that are, their job is just relationships with players. They were players in the past, et cetera. And so maybe they have a carve-out role for a Marty Walsh or whoever. But I think with us and myself being the only full-time employee and kind of just 3 other officers, I think it's helpful that we played and we have those relationships.
Are you suggesting that all the hats you have to wear are real heavy?
Some are lighter than others.
That was half kidding. I didn't mean that totally seriously, but I think you get the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that is noticeable is you guys have been able to forge a really great relationship with the owners. Probably the first time, as long as I can remember, where there's not a looming strike. You guys have a really great rapport with each other and are working with one another pretty much all the time. That things are done fairly smoothly, that it doesn't seem to be upheavals anywhere in there.
Yeah, I think it's really important to approach it as a partnership. Obviously, we don't revenue share right now, but I think the only way the league grows is if we help them, and we want to help the league grow. And all that money that we spend fighting with each other can be used for a benefit rather than a dispute.
Right.
So if there's opportunities to come to reasonable agreements on certain things, we will do it. Obviously, we have to have certain grievances and arbitrate certain things, but for the most part, we try to work with the league. We try to be super reasonable, and just being kind of organized and getting on things ahead of time, I think helps a lot too. Like CBA negotiations are already starting. Obviously, that expires in a little over a year, and so those are important conversations to get going rather than wait until the last minute and try to come to a quick agreement. So hopefully we can work our way through some of those details and can keep working together. We have weekly calls with the league. I think Jessica was good with our relationship. Brett's been really good too. Yeah, I think everyone's trying to pull in the same direction. Obviously, there's minor disagreements, but we're all just trying to do our jobs.
Sure. Is full-time, do you think, on the horizon?
I think it could be. I think there's some steps that we need to take and some plans we need to implement in order to not have a whole bunch of players lost to their careers when we do flip that switch. I think it needs to be, getting younger guys moving into markets, getting them sort of situated jobs. And then when you do flip that switch, perhaps you just lose a couple of the older guys who have to focus on their careers. But there is sort of that balance of not flipping it too soon and not losing a whole bunch of the players and kind of massaging it that way.
I also think of the fan base, because if it's a full-time thing, you not take them and put it to fan base out of affordability. Because one of the selling points, of course, is unlike hockey or basketball, you can still bring a family of 4 and not go broke come into a game.
That's true. I'm not sure if that'll necessarily affect ticket prices or not. I imagine it would be. Obviously double the games is double the ticket revenue, but also double the cost of renting out the arenas, et cetera, if those are part of your expenses as well. So I think that would really depend on the individual model of each team, but it's hard to say with that.
Just a simple explanation for the viewers out there. Some teams will pay more per game because they have a different agreement for the arena than others do. So in other words, there's a lot of ways to get to the bottom line, and it depends. It's really going to be different for different teams for different reasons. So the cost isn't necessarily more, but it's definitely not less. But it's a question of how much less it can be because of prior agreements. And one would assume that with more games played, there might be a cost savings per game, but there's still the cost goes up, right?
That's right. And that was a good explanation. It's like, for example, some of the owners own their arena and then some have to rent their arenas. So those models are significantly different.
Yeah, and then it creates it creates a problem in regards to having a level playing field, which we've undone. When I say we as an NLL fan and a guy who considers the NLL very important and I want to be a part of it, the same reason, it's the same kind of idea, folks, that now they all play the same amount of games and they all travel as much. So there's the playing field has been leveled in that regard. Some people may not like it. It may be inconvenient for some players, but none of the players suffer independently of the others, if you will.
That's correct. Yeah.
Would NLLPA be pushing for expansion? We talked about it earlier. There's a lot of players that really could be NLL players that just don't have a home.
Yeah, I think expansion is always good, but you have to be strategic with it. it could be in the best interest to sort of move some teams around to more favorable markets than it would be to necessarily expand to a new one. I do agree. I think there's a lot of good players that are ready and eager to jump into the league. It's just finding those markets that are able to support those teams, and those owners that are able to perhaps soak those losses for a couple of years while the tide kind of turns as well.
Right. Now, you spend a lot of time working with other countries trying to grow the game, Rebeski Tournament, World Lacrosse, U.S. Boxla. Your thoughts in general about the state of the league and how everything is sort of wrapping up. It's never been healthier, in my opinion.
Yeah, I like to say this sometimes. I don't know if it's completely accurate, but I feel like we're kind of like the NHL in the 80s where, we're having some neutral site games. We're slowly expanding. The infrastructure is starting to be built out a little bit. So I really do like where we're at. I think the hockey infrastructure in the States helps box lacrosse grow from there as well. So I do think it's catching on, and it's pretty cool to see. I couldn't believe there was 46 countries represented when I was in Israel, and it's pretty special.
Right. Now, with it going into the Olympics in 2028, even though it's in the Sixes program, I think that's when we put on our seatbelt and watch, because you're going to have another 280 countries having a look at this for the first time and going, whoa. That's when the marketing goes, and that's when I think everything just we're already off the ground floor, but I think that's when it takes its monumental leap.
I agree, and I feel like box lacrosse is super similar to that, and so that's been part of what we've been reaching out to the other countries, U.S. Box and stuff about, is just we think that we can marriage some relationships here between some players in some countries and help teach them box lacrosse, which is very similar to sixes. So hopefully that's successful.
And the sixes means that it's easier to field a team if you don't have a large base.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, I was at the Rebeski tournament last year. I'm going again in a couple of weeks over to Prague, and I was stunned to see European lacrosse and how great it is, and how it really, it's like hockey. If Canada, the U.S. aren't careful, just like hockey, it's going to, catch up to them. I was amazed at just how good they are out there.
Me too. I went to that tournament. I finished my last law exam and headed right to the airport and headed to that tournament and coached, because it was when I had my hurt knee. But I couldn't believe, like, the junior Czech team, they were running similar systems to what we were running and stuff like that. That is one of the coolest tournaments ever. So I'm a huge fan, and I think maybe if incomes increase a little bit, maybe we do have some people that try to jump over and make a splash. There's some good Finnish players. There's good players all over the place.
There aren't enough coaches, right? There are other players and coaches.
There aren't enough sports in the world that are contact oriented, and people generally tend to gravitate to contact sports. And when you're in a world that contact sports are like, you watch soccer, basketball, and all of a sudden you've got this, or golf, and all of a sudden you've got this game where there's contact. I think it's very attractive for people who've never seen it before. I think it bites them. It bites them hard.
I agree. And then just circling back to the sixes thing with the smaller rosters and easier to field them. That was a big part about getting into the Olympics as well, is there's only so many athletes that are allowed. And so if you can make those rosters a little smaller, it was a little bit easier to fit lacrosse into the Olympics, and the girls and the guys can play the same rules. So I think there's a lot of good positives about it.
Yeah. And eliminate a little bit of the depth advantage.
Yes.
A little.
Yeah. I'm excited to watch Japan. I think they're going to be awesome.
Yeah, they blew me away in the field championships back in the summer. They're just amazing. All homegrown, too. Not just somebody who used to have a grandfather that was the most amazing thing I've watched. Yeah. Anyways, our time is just about up. I really want to thank you for taking the time. It was just like a quick hour, I'm telling you.
Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. It was nice chatting with you guys. You're very well educated on all the subjects, so it was fun chatting.
And I'm hoping to see you in Toronto real soon.
Yeah, hopefully. We'll see.
Good luck on your season, and good luck on the work that you're doing. And, of course, good luck to the National Lacrosse League. All good things.
Thank you very much. Talk to you guys later.
All right, Gary, thanks for doing this.
Pleasure as always, Frank.
All right, for Gary and, of course, Reid Reinholdt, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching NLL Lacrosse Talk, seen live Thursdays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network for lacrosse talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer. Please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody, and don't forget to try picking up a stick. It might be fun.